Anyway, we live in absolutely incredible times. We often talk about various technologies. We hype them up before they actually become reality. We talk about AR, VR, augmented reality, virtual reality before it's actually pragmatic. We talk about autonomous driving vehicles before it's actually pragmatic. We've talked about big data for a long time, but big data is here. It is real. It is huge. We are producing incredible volumes of data on an ongoing basis. 90% of all data ever produced was produced in the last 2 years. It is incredible, and there's only one way to describe this age that we live in of big data. Data is the new oil. Okay? And there are tremendous similarities between the world of big oil and big data. Now, both have been around forever. Oil's been around for the longest time. Data has been around forever. In fact, the first oil well was drilled in China in 346 AD. They used to transport oil in bamboo pipes. But what changed the world was the ability to drill, refine, extract, and distribute oil at scale. That changed the world. And what is changing the world when it comes to data is the ability to extract, refine, process, and deal with the data at scale. Now, both oil and data have created industry titans. In the world of oil, Rockefellers, the Gettys, the Bessells. In the world of data, we have Zuckerberg, we have Bezos, Paul Hooper. So there are industry titans getting created on both sides of the equation. What changed the oil industry from a legal and regulatory perspective was major leaks. We all remember the Exxon Valdez disaster, which was a major ecological disaster. It led to a lot of regulation. What is changing the data industry is major leaks in the data industry as well, right? And obviously, we know about GDPR. This is the beginning. I think there's going to be a lot more regulation coming. California recently passed the CCPA, the California Consumer Privacy Act, and there's going to be a lot more regulation coming about as a consequence of all the leaks going on in the world of data as well. Both oil and data have had their share of political scandals and testimonies. 1907, Rockefeller testified before the courts. 2018, Zuckerberg testified before the Senate. Both of them got off absolutely scot-free. Not a glove was laid on either of them. Oil has had its share of scandals as well. The Teapot Dome scandal was the biggest scandal prior to Watergate. And of course, we're seeing this happen in the world of data as well. Oil has changed history forever. Data is changing history forever. Why did Japan invade Pearl Harbor? Because the US cut off their oil supply. Why did Germany go into Russia when it shouldn't have? Because they needed the oil. And certainly what we're seeing in the world of data as well, we know what happened with the 2016 elections. It is having a massive impact on the history of the world as well. And so there are a lot of parallels between the world of big oil and big data. And one has to ask the question, as we think about the world of big data, what is the position of companies that can actually extract, refine, get all the data, store it, aggregate it, and distribute it at scale? And we know what happened over there in the world of big oil. It led to massive companies who weathered multiple storms, multiple economic cycles, companies like Chevron, Shell, Exxon, BP. The position that they had as extractors and refiners of big oil gave them the ability to scale over extended periods of time, weather political scandals, weather major economic downturns, and just stay and grow over the years. And I think that position is a position that is occupied by us, right? And we have the opportunity to grow over the years to weather multiple economic cycles and eventually become really, really large by virtue of the position we occupy as the company that extracts, processes, refines, and distributes data at scale. Now, what's interesting about oil is oil by itself is okay, but it's really the industries that oil created, which became massive industries. Think about the automobile sector. Think about aerospace, defense, energy, petrochemicals. These were all large companies that became possible primarily because of the ability to use oil at scale. And data, too, is creating large companies. There are multiple large industries that are getting created. I'm going to talk about one of them today because we have some relevance, particularly significant relevance, to what's going on in that world, and that is the world of digital transformation. If you go online, there is so much getting talked about around digital transformation. Digital transformation is not about technology. Digital transformation is a business imperative. It is about transforming businesses, but leveraging strong technology underpinnings. It is based on the ability to leverage a lot of the technological innovations that are going on in the industry, but it is a business imperative. It's not primarily a technology imperative. In 2017, $1.1 trillion was spent on digital transformation, and it took about 10 years to get to this kind of spend. 2021, we are expecting that spend to double to $2 trillion. There are very few industries that double in a space of 5 years of a $1 trillion base. The amount of money that is going into digital transformation is accelerating even off a $1 trillion base. This is huge. This is massive out there. So the question is, what is digital transformation? What does it mean? Right? And as I mentioned, it is fundamentally a business imperative. It is about transforming companies from business strategy, a business model perspective. What it means transforming companies' culture and capabilities, the people in the companies, the processes in the companies, the products, the technologies those companies produce, and essentially making companies data-driven companies. This is the key part of digital transformation. It is about making companies data-driven companies with 3 goals. The first one is to fundamentally transform the customer experience. The second one is to drive significant operational efficiencies in all parts of the business, the front and the back, in all aspects of the business. And the third one is to drive business model transformation. Right? And all of this is being accomplished on the backs of the technologies that we are very familiar with. Paul talked about it, Shane talked about it as well, and you'll hear a lot more about this from Sachi and Ananda. 5G, 100 gig, the cloud, software as a service, infrastructure as a service, platform as a service. The world of connected devices, this is huge for digital transformation, and I will talk a little bit about this as well. Machine learning, AI, these are all key technologies on which digital transformation is being built out there. So who's succeeding and who's not in digital transformation? If you take a look at the companies at the bottom, the ones in green, these are born digital companies. They're not transforming into digital companies. They're born digital companies. What that means is that they're driving innovation at an extremely rapid pace, leveraging all of these digital technologies, and that is putting a lot of pressure on traditional companies. And so when we hear about the $1 trillion going to $2 trillion, that spending investment is coming from the traditional companies because they are being forced to respond. And they are responding. When you look at the companies over here in the yellow-greenish color, Nike is a fantastic example of digital transformation. Nike is not a footwear company. It is not a sports apparel company. Nike is a technology company. Over the last 2 years, Nike has made several technology acquisitions. They are acquiring AI companies. Think about it. A sneaker company acquiring AI companies. And the AI companies that they're acquiring are to be able to identify people, identify their feet, the size of their feet. Based on that, send them suggestions for footwear based on their likes and their fit automatically. Nike's app, Sneakers, SNKRS, is the #1 footwear selling app today available. Nike by Melrose is a concept store, and the entire inventory in that concept store is based on analytics that they've extracted, leveraging all of the footwear patterns for all the consumers within the neighboring zip codes of that particular store. So they are leveraging digital technologies in a big way to completely transform themselves. Porsche, if you go to Porsche's website, they actually have a press release from 2018 outlining their digital transformation initiatives. Go to Volkswagen, which is closely linked to Porsche. Volkswagen is spending 3.5 billion euros, 3.5 billion euros on their own digital transformation. Caterpillar, I've not put this out here, but Caterpillar is a great example. Caterpillar makes heavy machinery for construction. And you start to think about it, okay, construction, digital transformation, what's the connection? Think about it this way. When you're using Caterpillar's heavy machinery at a construction site, and the machinery fails, your construction grinds to a halt. That leads to delays in projects and very expensive overruns. And so what Caterpillar is doing is they're embedding sensors in all of the heavy machinery, and they're building applications to be able to track the data from those sensors. And based on that data, they can notify customers when the machinery requires servicing, when the parts require servicing. So when those machines are actually deployed on-site, they do not fail on-site, they do not fail in the normal failure modes, and customers have continuous uptime. They are becoming a data analytics company. Disney is another great example. Disney was facing a lot of pressure from the streaming media companies, a lot of pressure from cord cutting, where consumers are no longer subscribing to cable channels. They're cutting the cord and going straight over the air for over-the-top applications for streaming. And so Disney is spending a tremendous amount of money in taking their own services like ESPN and going direct to consumer. They are spending $70+ billion acquiring 21st Century Fox just to be able to go direct to consumer in an attempt to completely transform how they deliver their content to consumers as well. So this is happening in every industry out there today, and the companies that have not embraced digital transformation are failing in a big way. Digital transformation is not about, as I said, taking existing applications, existing services, and digitizing them. The companies that did that failed, and we know them. Kodak, Borders. Nokia is another very interesting example. Nokia and Motorola ruled the feature phone industry. They were the leaders in the feature phone industry. As that industry transformed and people started moving to smartphones, they did not keep up. And when Nokia sold their handset business to Microsoft, this became famous. The CEO, in his closing comments, made a statement. His statement was, "We did nothing wrong, and yet we lost." And he shed a tear when he said that. And this is what happens, right? Digital transformation is overtaking all of these companies, and if they're not truly transforming themselves, they are getting left by the wayside. So what is our role? What can we do to help companies move ahead in their attempts and efforts to transform themselves? Let's quickly look at what the process of digital transformation looks like. It starts with the vision, and this is a board-level conversation. It's a C-level conversation. It's not much role we can play over there, but it starts with a vision for what the digital transformation for the company looks like, and then the planning phase, where the companies identify their capabilities, the resources, their culture, and what needs to transform about their culture. This is the first bottleneck companies face. It's the cultural challenges for digital transformation. Again, not much of a role for us in that part of the digital transformation initiative. But then comes the building process, where the companies are building applications to address customer experience, to address operational experiences, business model transformation. These applications are being built on the backs of platforms today, whether they are SaaS-based platforms, whether they're on-prem platforms. It is essentially taking a lot of different platforms and building applications on top of that. Then comes the execution phase, where you deploy these applications, and then you learn from it, and you go back and reiterate. Where companies are failing outside of the cultural challenges is on the execution phase. And it is failing over there because these applications are becoming extremely complex to deploy. These applications are essentially a combination of multiple different platforms, multiple different tiers, and ensuring that these applications run as they expect it to is really complex. Let me give an example, and I know this because this is a friend of mine. He has started a company to help manufacturing facilities. What they do is that they actually deploy very cheap cameras, Logitech type of cameras that you typically use for webcams, on manufacturing lines. And they're using this, for example, for motorcycle companies who are bundling thousands and thousands of parts and sending them to different countries. And if the wrong part gets bundled into the package and gets sent to a country, that's a massive cost to the motorcycle company. So they're deploying cheap cameras on the manufacturing line and applying AI models to be able to detect, based on the shape of the parts on the manufacturing line, whether the right part is going to the right packaging box. Now imagine if that particular system, that camera, the application, the AI model slows down, or there's a bottleneck, the entire manufacturing line comes to a halt. Or if there's a mistake, the entire process has to repeat itself all over again. So this process of deploying these new applications for digital transformation is one that is actually fraught with a lot of challenges when it comes to actually the deployment models. And the second one, because digital transformation is leveraging all of these connected devices, the ability to secure them is also becoming a significant challenge. So here's where we have a role to play. But in order to participate, we have to transform ourselves as well. Right? We have traditionally operated at the packet level and perhaps maybe at the session level. But when we start talking to companies about digital transformation and the applications that they're deploying for the digital transformation, we have to be able to talk at the application level ourselves. Right? We can no longer be working at the packet level. And so this is why we have developed our own application intelligence capabilities. This is the framework within which our application intelligence capabilities fits in. And there are three key pieces that we have developed to address three key challenges that customers are going to face around the journey on digital transformation. The first is to be able to identify application usage and patterns. What are the applications that I am actually using in my infrastructure? And it's a simple question to ask, but when your application is actually using 5 different platforms underneath that, it becomes really complex to really define what are the different applications that constitute the Uber application that you have built. And so the first part that we are building out as part of our application intelligence is the ability to visualize all the applications running in your infrastructure. And over time, this will get enhanced to not just show the applications, but to be able to show the application flows in your infrastructure. Who is using those applications? At what times of day? For how long? Right? And we will give you a complete map of that in your infrastructure. The second capability that we are building and bringing to market as part of our application intelligence is our ability to isolate applications. Now, we have done some of this in flow mapping, where we isolate traffic at a layer 3, at a layer 4 level, TCP, UDP port number, and so on and so forth. We've done this at an ASF level, if some of you are familiar, where you can write regular expressions and patterns to match certain applications. This is different. This is straight at the application level. You want to identify streaming media applications, boom. You name the streaming media application, we'll identify it. You want to identify things like Skype, you just say, I want to identify Skype, we will identify that. You want to identify applications that are used for the world of connected devices, you name the applications, we will identify them. On day one when we launched this, 3,000 applications available, okay, on day one. And then, following shortly, the ability to identify metadata for those applications so you can track KPIs for those applications as they are getting deployed, and then you can iterate, companies can iterate on that and make the application deployments better. When we launch this on day one, you will have 5,000 metadata elements for those 3,000 applications. So this is huge. It is transformative for us. This has not been easy, but it is a step in the right direction. As our customers are transforming themselves, we have to transform ourselves, and this is a huge step in our own transformation by moving ourselves up to the application layer. You will hear a lot more about this from Ananda, from Preetham, and a lot of the other folks with many details, but I want to put this in the context of what's going on in the industry and the role that we are trying to play over here. The second challenge that we talked about for digital transformation is security. Now, I can spend hours talking about security, but I don't have hours. But we are living in a world where this is not going to be a perfect storm. This is a perfect storm. Security is the bane today for any digital transformation effort. And I've talked about this in the past. I'm going to start with talking about a few truisms around what's going on in the world of security. The first is, everything is a computer. And this is huge. It has massive implications. Anytime you put a network interface and a CPU on a system, it becomes a computer. And with computers, you cannot constrain their functionality. My phone here, I call this a phone, but this is not a phone. It can make phone calls. It's a sophisticated computer, but it can make phone calls, but it can call my taxi. It's a TV. I can stream content to this. It's my concierge. I can make travel reservations, hotel reservations from this. There's a lot of things this can do. And the question is, how do I test for all of these different modes? Back in the days when I had a telephone, it used to be a big black box with a little rotary dial pad. And the only thing it did was make calls and receive calls. And because of that, I could test for that, and I could define the failure modes for that. But when you start thinking about devices like this, that can make calls, that can stream video, can stream audio, can call the taxi, can turn on my thermostat, how do I test for all the failure modes for that? It's a challenge. It's a real challenge. Think about your cars today. As you start moving towards semi-autonomous driving vehicles or autonomous driving vehicles, your cars are no longer an engine with a transmission, wheels, and brakes. Your car is actually a very sophisticated system of computers that controls your engine, your transmission, your wheels, and brakes. And this is leading to a lot of challenges around being able to actually constrain these devices. Anytime you think about devices becoming computers, and all our systems are becoming computers, it is easy to think about upgrading those devices. Think about this. You can upgrade those devices to do something different. And when that something different is something bad, that upgrade is called malware. Right? You can upgrade any system with malware to do some bad behavior, and this is a real challenge for the industry. The second truism is that in the world of security, we talk about CIA. I've talked about this in the past as well, the triad of CIA: confidentiality, integrity, availability. And we talk about this in security all the time. As we start thinking about the migration of attacks on data to the attacks on devices. We are moving from attacks on confidentiality to attacks on the integrity and availability. When Facebook gets compromised, when Yahoo gets compromised, Equifax gets compromised, and your information is lost, those are attacks on confidentiality of information. Attacks on integrity and availability take on a far more ominous tone. Imagine your health records have been compromised. You don't like that. We don't like that. It is an absolute pain. It is a little scary that my health record information has been compromised. That's an attack on confidentiality. But what if my blood type was changed in my medical records? I can die from that. That's an attack on integrity. Right? Think about ransomware. If somebody locks up my data and asks me to pay 20 bitcoins to get back the data, and I may pay the 20 bitcoins, and I may get the keys to get the data, or maybe I have to go back to my backups, and it's an absolute pain, I learned to deal with it. Think about ransomware when the computer that's controlling the brakes in your semi-autonomous vehicle is under somebody else's control. Right? You can die from that. And so when attacks move from attacks on confidentiality to attacks on the integrity and availability of systems, they take on a whole different rhetoric and becomes a far more ominous challenge that we have to deal with. The third truism is most software is poorly written. Software is getting written all over the world, and we are churning out software engineers globally at a massive rate. Many of these software engineers come from great universities. Many of them have taken a course online, or they've taken a course in some small facility out there with no idea how to write secure software. Right? And the challenge is that almost all software has bugs. Many bugs are vulnerabilities. And so almost all software has vulnerabilities today. And it's only getting worse. And vulnerabilities transcend systems in a connected world. As our systems are coming online, this is really, really important. As our systems are coming online, our systems are breaking down. In 2016, there was a massive DDoS attack. I've talked about this as well, where large portions of the internet went down. Okay? Now, you sit and think about this. Large portions of the internet have gone down because of a DDoS attack. That DDoS attack originated from home DVR systems and home IP cameras. There was a botnet called Mirai botnet, which enslaved millions and millions of home DVR systems. And they were used to mount a massive attack on a DNS provider called DIN. And they took down DIN, and consequently, users could no longer resolve the DNS names to IP address and get to the websites, and portions of the internet went blank. Think about this. Home DVR systems taking down the internet. When Target was breached, they were breached through their HVAC contractor. In 2018, there was a breach that occurred in a casino where many high rollers' information was actually compromised. And I'm not making this up. That breach occurred through the connected fish tank in that casino. Okay? So when we start thinking about bringing all these systems online, when we live in a connected world, vulnerabilities transcend systems. And this is a real challenge for us, particularly as it applies to supply chain. And this is a whole different topic to discuss, but this is becoming a bigger and bigger challenge for us. The next thing is that the human element is the easiest to compromise. And this has very far-reaching implications today. In many cases, we sit and think about securing our end systems, right? And we put antivirus solutions on them or endpoint protection on them. But the first target vector of attack is the end system, because it is easy to be able to address the emotions of the human who's controlling that end system. Right? Today, the first vector of attack, typically in many attack life cycles, is a phishing email. And the phishing email plays on human emotions. It plays to things that you like. It plays to things that upset you. It plays to things that are urgent for you. And it forces you to click on an email and visit a website. And potentially, just by visiting the website, malware gets downloaded onto your system. It's called a drive-by download. Or you may actually enter your credentials on the particular website, and your information is compromised. But the human element is becoming the easiest one to compromise. Consequently, the endpoint is becoming the easiest to compromise. This leads me to the last one, which is that if the endpoint is becoming the easiest to compromise, then we have to look elsewhere for security. And that elsewhere is the network. Now, let's think about the network. Many of you know about the OSI model, 7 layers. Physical layer, MAC layer, network layer, transport layer, and so on and so forth. When you think about the physical and MAC and IP layers, the networking layers, they were designed by choice to be unreliable. Right? Think about the IP layer. IP is an unreliable protocol. It was not designed to be a reliable protocol. Our internet is based on IP. Our internet is unreliable and by association insecure. It is by choice. The designers chose it to be that way, leaving security, leaving reliability to the endpoint and applications. That was the design of the internet. Unfortunately, because the endpoint has become the easiest thing to compromise, we can no longer rely on endpoint security. Consequently, we have to come back to the network. And therefore, because the network was never designed with security, our IP protocols, DNS, DHCP, fundamentally insecure protocols, security has to become an overlay function. Now, how does this overlay manifest itself? It manifests itself by way of appliances and boxes. You put another box for a firewall, physical or virtual. You put a box for an IPS. Right? You put a box for an APT. You put appliances into your system, and that's how these overlay functions come about to secure your infrastructure. And this is a problem for us. Right? This is a real problem for us. Because if you look at the last 20 years, we have not innovated in security. Sure, the appliances have become better and faster. Sure, firewalls have become better and faster. Sure, IPSs have become better and faster. But the model of deployment is still a box for 20 years. It hasn't changed, right? And that really, really slows down innovation. Here's why. If you have to go innovate, by the way, these next slides, I presented them at last year's SKO. So for the folks who were here last year, this is a good refresher. It outlines a little bit about our vision of where we are going. For the new folks, pay attention. This is important because this is the vision of where we are going. Every company that wants to go build network security has to start building a data acquisition layer. You may start with an x86 appliance, 25 gig, 40 gig, 100 gig. You put all those interfaces in, then you sit and figure out, okay, 100 gig data, how do I absorb 100 gig data into my x86 appliance? That's a lot of data to do at line speed. I got to go hire a small team of developers to do things like DPDK or SRIOV to be able to do all that. And I need 5 or 6 developers just to go do that portion. Then on top of that, I have to do the data transformation. Once I have the data coming into my network appliance, I have to transform it. If it's encrypted, I have to decrypt it. If it's duplicated, I have to deduplicate it. If it's encapsulated, I have to de-encapsulate it. There's a whole bunch of things I have to do. I have to extract metadata from all of the packet traces. Once I have all of that, then I have to build a storage layer, right? And all network security companies that are building network appliances have to go through this. So to build a storage layer, it can be a massive data lake. It can be a small data lake. It doesn't matter. I have to find ways to be able to store the data very efficiently. Once I have done all of this, then I can actually start doing what I really want to do, which is apply my algorithms, my analytics, my real IP, the cool idea that I had that I wanted to start with these 2 friends and take funding for. This is where it comes in. But I have to do all the other layers before that. And then on top of that, I have to build a presentation layer to be able to reflect all of this in the right light. And there's some IP in how you present the data. But we're no longer content with just presenting information. We want to take some action. So now I have to build adapters. I have to build connectors into routers, into switches, into firewalls, into IPSs, into endpoints. There are dozens and dozens of APIs I have to deal with. And before you know it, 2 years have gone by for the startup before they can launch a product because they got to go do all of this. And $30 million of funding is needed before they can do all of this, before they can come to market with an innovative product. 2 years and $30 million, do you think the bad guys are waiting for that long? Absolutely not, right? So we as an industry have stifled innovation, completely stifled innovation when it comes to network security. This is really, really slowing us down. And this has to change. This has to change. So we have been taking some steps at changing this, right? We said, okay, sorry, one more thing. I'm talking about all of this from the perspective of the innovator. Sit and think about this from the consumer of this, which is the SOC operator or the network operator. When I go to a network operator or a SOC operator and say, I have the latest and greatest security appliance, it does all of these cool things, go deploy this. The first thing the security person has to go talk to the networking guy and say, I want to deploy this. Networking guy says, I got to schedule a maintenance window. Okay? Schedule a maintenance window. 3 weeks have gone by. I get the maintenance window. I go deploy my security solution. I'm soaking all the traffic, getting all the information. I'm going back to my vendor and saying, your device isn't doing anything for me. So the vendor comes in and says, oh, that's because I'm not seeing all the traffic. I'm only seeing one side of the traffic. I need to see both sides of it to correlate the traffic and tell you what's really going on. Security guy goes back to the networking guy, and the networking guy says, of course, I have a redundant network. I have multiple paths in my network. I've tapped you over here. I haven't tapped you over there. You're not seeing all the traffic. Security guy says, I need to see both the sides of the traffic. Networking guy says, sure, let me schedule a maintenance window. Okay. 3 weeks go by. Finally, 6 weeks, 8 weeks later, I have everything loaded in. I'm seeing all sides of the traffic. Now all the traffic is coming in. Now I have to soak the traffic for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, so I can collect all the information and then run my algorithms. Before you know it, 3 months, 4 months have gone by before the vendor can demonstrate the value and before the user can see any value. Right? This is a really slow process. It is a really slow process. So we've come in and we said, OK, we can help. We will take away the need for doing data acquisition, deploy Gigamon, do it once. Any other vendor that you bring in can benefit from that. You don't have to go do that again. Right? So we built out the data acquisition layer. We will tap into the network. 1 gig, 10 gig, 40 gig, 25 gig, 100 gig, 400 gig. It doesn't matter. We will tap into the network, wire it once, be done. We will do the data transformation. You have duplicate packets? No problem. We'll dedupe it. You have encapsulated packets? We will de-encapsulate it. You don't want to look at headers? We will strip the headers. You want to extract metadata? We will extract the metadata. It is encrypted? Bring it on. We'll decrypt it. We will do all the transformation and all the normalization that you need. We will do it once, and then all the vendors can benefit out of that. Right? You don't have to keep doing it again and again. You want to take certain actions? That's fine. Deploy is inline. Use our inline bypass arrangements. It's a fantastic solution. By virtue of us being inline, we can take certain actions. You want APIs? Don't write to 15 different APIs. It's a pain because everybody's APIs are constantly changing. We are front-ending a lot of these appliances. Leverage our APIs. Do it once, call it a day. Keep it simple. The one thing we didn't have, we talked about this at last SKO, is we didn't have the ability to store data. Right? And I'm not talking about full packet capture. I'm talking about storing metadata elements that are really critical for analysis, for forensics. And we didn't have that. And what we talked about last SKO is we are going to go build this. This is something we're going to go invest in and add it to our portfolio. And during the year, we acquired a company called Iceberg to do exactly this. Right? So this is where Iceberg fits in, and now we call that the Insight technology and the Insight product portfolio. So we acquired Iceberg in mid-2018, and Iceberg gave us the ability to be able to store data at massive scale. Right? Iceberg, and what we call Insight now, is a born digital company. The technology is built in the cloud. It is a born digital company leveraging all of the digital capabilities that multiple companies are leveraging today out there. It is a fantastic solution. It scales to massive volumes of data, and you have the ability to replay the data, to be able to collate the data, to be able to enrich the data. It is a fantastic solution. Along with that, the Iceberg acquisition also gave us the ability to apply analytics on it. So there's a part of Iceberg that does a really fantastic job at doing detections and forensics on that data as well. And that's the detection and forensics engine that we are calling as part of our Iceberg Detect and Investigate. There's a lot more that you can do from data analytics, and that comes from all of our partners out there. But Iceberg gave us these two really key capabilities. And with this, what we are moving towards is one platform, wire once, deploy it once, and everybody else gets the benefit. Now, if you want to innovate, you want to go build the next generating security solution, you don't have to invest $30 million in 2 years. Security can simply be an app on top of this. This is the transformation that we're talking about. When we talk about digital transformation, this is the transformation that we need to go do in the world of cybersecurity. Cybersecurity no longer has to be a bunch of appliances that people have to invest years and years to build, multiple millions of dollars to build, and months to go deploy and see the value out of it. Cybersecurity should be as simple as saying, I've got the Gigamon platform deployed, let me download this app, off you go. Within a day or 2 days, vendors should be able to see the value, should be able to demonstrate the value of their application, and users, NOC and SOC operators, should be able to see the value within a day or two, because we are already deployed. The platform is already operational. If there's no value in this particular vendor solution, deploy the next one. Let me go use this one. Click on a button, use this application, and off you go. Right? So this is where the world of cybersecurity needs to go if we need to outsmart the bad actors. Defense has to dominate. And the way defense dominates is by out-innovating the bad actors. And this is the way we do it. I also want to take this opportunity to talk a little bit about what security looks like more broadly. We have this one sliver that's painted orange over here, which is the detect and investigate capabilities, the apps that come as part of the Iceberg acquisition. But if we explode security out, what does it look like? Does anybody here remember our Defender lifecycle model? Anybody? Yeah, we've talked about this, right? So let me explore this out a little bit, and this is what it looks like. This is how the whole picture comes together. When customers build security, this is what a customer journey looks like. They start with the basic good hygiene. They start with the firewall. You still got to go do it. You got to do your antivirus. You got to do your endpoint protection. These are good things to go do. More importantly, you do things like network segmentation, right, to create more boundaries for the bad actors to jump over. You do things like multi-factor authentication. You take all of these precautions to make it harder for the bad guy to carry out his activities. Once you have done that, the next step is to build out all the detection capabilities, so then it is easier to catch the bad guy. Remember, if you haven't done the basic precautions, it is very easy for the bad guy to carry out the activities anywhere across the infrastructure. But when you have done multi-factor authentication, when you have done network segmentation, you're making it harder for the bad actor to carry out their activities, which means it is easier to detect their footprint, right? And that's where the detection capabilities come in. And this is where the Insight, Detect, and Investigate engine plays a fantastic role. It's one piece of the solution. There are many other solutions that our partners are building out there. You'll see many of them out there. They bring fantastic capabilities to this. And in the future, we will continue to work with other partners and bring innovative solutions to market. On top of that, you build out the prediction engine, right? This is AI-based solutions for cybersecurity that can actually do cognitive recognition of the next steps in the attack lifecycle to predict what are the next steps the bad actors are going to do. And then you can go take the containment, and containment doesn't necessarily mean blocking. It may mean contained detonation. It may mean blocking. It can mean a variety of things. And here's where you can leverage our APIs to take certain actions very quickly, and then you go back to the detection phase. So this is how the Defender lifecycle fits into all of this. For the folks who are new, there's plenty of material on the Defender lifecycle. If you go to the Gigamon website, you'll find the information out there. But this is what it all looks like. A deploy once platform and security as a set of applications on top of that platform. Now, that is disruption, and that is transformation in the security industry. The question is, why stop there? Why not move beyond that? Why not move to subscriber analytics as an application? Why not move to application performance management as an application? Sure. And these will all come from many of our ecosystem partners out there. Some applications we will develop on top of this platform. Many of these will come from our partners out there. Customers should have the luxury and liberty of clicking and choosing and very quickly deploying all of these and seeing the value, right? So this is ultimately where we are going. Let me pause for a second here and recap everything we've talked about. Data is the new oil. And in this world of data as the new oil, the companies that can extract, process, enrich, and distribute data at scale are companies that are going to be able to weather major economic cycles. We are very well suited to be in that position. Data is enabling the world of digital transformation. Digital transformation is huge, $2.1 trillion in 2021. Digital transformation is all about deploying a next generation set of applications for customer experience, operational efficiencies, business model transformation. In order for us to be able to work with our customers and help them on the digital transformation efforts, we have to start working at an application level. And our application intelligence is targeted exactly at that space. 3,000 applications on day one. You can visualize them, you can isolate them, and in the future, you'll have metadata available for 5,000 metadata elements as well. Security is the bane of digital transformation, is the curse of digital transformation. The world of connected devices is making this extremely difficult. The human element is making the endpoint very easy to compromise. Security has to move into the network. The network was never designed for security. IP was designed to be an unreliable and insecure protocol. Consequently, security has to be an overlay. Overlays have been used for 20 years in the form of boxes and appliances. Slows down innovation tremendously. We are changing that. Security has to move towards a model where security is an app, and the Gigamon platform, or anybody else's platform, but the Gigamon platform with all the capabilities we built in has to be a wire once model, a core part of your infrastructure. Once we are deployed, security can simply become an app on top of that. Let me end with one interesting topic. It's called punctuated equilibrium. Darwin talked about evolution, which is continuous change, right? Continuous evolution. And back in the 80s, if you took an MBA course, or in the 90s, if you took an MBA course, the term that people was using at the time was Kaizen. Does anybody remember, is anybody as old as I am, Kaizen? Who remembers that, right? Continuous improvement, right? Well, Darwin has been proven a little bit wrong, okay? So Gould and Eldridge, two scientists, talked about a slightly different theory, right? They talked about the fact that evolution actually does not, species don't actually change because of continuous slow evolution. They talked about a continued period of equilibrium, where not much happens, and then there's very rapid change. that punctuates that equilibrium, and at the end of the rapid change, new species emerge. And then there's a new equilibrium. And that punctuated equilibrium is playing itself out today in every industry we can think of. Sit and think about the music industry. Back in the 80s and 90s, music was dominated, at least the way music was distributed and consumed, was dominated by Sony, Walkman. People remember Walkman? And then music became digital, right? And when it became digital, we entered this phase of punctuated equilibrium, where there was a mad scramble for what the new steady state is going to look like. Is it going to be digital music streamed? Is it digital music downloaded from website? Is it music available over satellite radio? And there were many companies that competed for that. And now we are reaching a new equilibrium where it's all about streaming music, and Spotify, who would have thought, is emerging as a leader, right? And gone are the days where the previous leaders ruled the roost. And so the new equilibrium for music is streaming and companies like Spotify, and that's what's happening. Same thing is happening for us in our industry. When you sit and think about security, security was dominated by companies like Symantec, McAfee, Checkpoint, right? But we are in a state of punctuated equilibrium right now, where there are new leaders emerging. We are very much in that game. We are very much in this state over here today with our platform. But there are new leaders. There's Palo Alto, there's FireEye, there's CrowdStrike, there's several other companies who were not there 15 years ago. And when we reach a new equilibrium, if we can execute to the vision that we talked about, and if we can drive towards that success, I am confident that in the new steady state, Gigamon will be one of the core vendors in the new steady state, along with a couple of our partners. I don't know who those winners will be out there. I know we will be. And that journey begins here today with all of you. So thank you. All systems go.